Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. Joining me once again, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What's going on is we're going to be talking today about Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I know in last week's episode we were like, oh, we'll do Echo, because that was, maybe a shorter run and whatnot. But you started watching Percy Jackson a couple nights ago.
Yes.
And basically binged the whole thing in one night. And I had watched the first half of the season, basically like came out to grab dinner basically like right when you were at that point, and then we just pretty much watched the rest of the episodes. So it's what we're gonna end up talking about.
Well, we watched all but the last episode, and then between then and
like
before,
an hour later it came out.
It came
so
out.
We just watched the last episode that night.
Just popped it up, just went back. We were in here, you're like, hey, I think the new episode's out, and we went back out and we watched it, and it was
I was starting to put together the doc, and it was like release date January 30th, and I'm like, that's today. And it's like 10 o'clock now. And sure enough, by the time we got out there, it was out there on Disney Plus.
Yep.
We're going to be talking all about Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I forgot to look up what episode it was, but we've done an episode on Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief, before. Let me see if I can find that real quick. It was an episode we did, an early episode of that Plus show, maybe in the 20s, I want to say, with Jazz, because that was like one of her favorite things. Episode 11. So yes, like
real early,
way back when, back in March of 2020. Jazz was on that episode because she was a big fan of the Percy Jackson stuff. I know former collaborator Ben Bellevue, also a big fan of Percy Jackson, and was very excited when this got announced because both of them, Ben and Jazz, were very disappointed by the films originally. And unfortunately, I just dropped the ball and didn't bother reaching out to Jazz to see if she wanted to try and do this on such short notice. I have no idea if she's been watching the show or not as it's been coming out. So apologies, Jazz, if you ever listen to this and were like, what the fuck? Why didn't you invite me on?
Yeah, 100%. It was an audible last night.
Yeah.
So that's it. It's mostly on me because I should have been watching Echo, but I watched Percy Jackson instead.
Yeah. We're that's why we picked it, is because we basically Cameron binged it this week and was really excited to talk about it. The history lesson here, this originally released between December 19th, 2023 and January 30th, 2024. So it started basically one a week pre-holidays, and then here we are wrapping up. Our other releases of the time, I don't really have any for this because I just don't tend to pull them in. So I usually skip over this segment and was just on rote reading from the doc. Our runtime on these was between 34 and 45 minutes per episode. In the Percy Jackson timeline of things that I've gone ahead and put together, let's just go ahead and say all of these are Percy Jackson and the Olympians. But the Lightning Thief book came out originally in 2005, followed by Sea of Monsters in 2006, Titan's Curse in 2007, The Battle of the Labyrinth in 2008, and The Last Olympian book in 2009. They were followed up in February of 2010 by The Lightning Thief movie, followed by, a few years later, Percy Jackson, Sea of Monsters in August of 2013, and then a decade of silence and dormancy. Before last year, actually, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Chalice of the Gods was released as a new book. I believe that was September of last year. Kind of in the anticipation / hype / leading up to the series here between December and January. And Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Wrath of the Triple Goddess book is slated for a September 2024 release. So Rick Riordan getting back into the swing of writing the Percy Jackson books, maybe with some newfound excitement working on the series. Our roll call here We have 3 directors over the course of these 8 episodes. James Bobbin directed the first couple episodes. Previously worked on The Ali G Show. He was also a writer on that. He also was a director and writer and creator of the Flight of the Conchords show, alongside, of course, the Flight of the Conchords band. He also directed The Muppets and Muppets Most Wanted movies. He also was a writer on Muppets Most Wanted. He also directed, beyond that, Alice Through the Looking Glass, Dora and the Lost City of Gold, and now Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Our director for episodes 3 and 4, as well as episode 7, was Anders Eggstrom, who has directed TV shows such as Taboo, Hannah, and C in the lead up to Percy Jackson and the Olympians here. And then for episodes 5 and 6, as well as episode 8, Jet Wilkinson directed. They've directed 167 episodes of Neighbors, as well as 120 episodes of Home and Away, which I believe both of I'm guessing both of those are like the UK equivalent of soaps, given the number of episodes and in a relatively brief, like 2 to 3 year span of time, I think, for each of those. But Jet Wilkinson has also directed episodes of Iron Fist, Nashville, Jessica Jones, Daredevil, The Punisher. Here they've directed these episodes of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and they are slated to direct at least 1, maybe 2 episodes of the upcoming Netflix Avatar: The Last Airbender series. So there you go. Our writers here, Rick Riordan, of course, the creator of the Percy Jackson series, as well as he wrote directly on episodes 1, 2, and 5 here. The show creator was Jonathan E. Steinberg. He also wrote on episodes 1 through 6. He is also the creator of the arguably cult classic show Jericho, that I know a lot of people were very disappointed because it got canceled kind of before its time. I remember there was a big like Save Jericho campaign.
Yeah.
Around that time.
As somebody who like has since gone back and watched Jericho, show was way ahead of its time. Really, really good.
Mm-hmm. He's also the creator of the series Human Target, as well as Black Sails. Monica Owusu-Breen wrote episode 3, which I believe was the Medusa episode. Was it Medusa, or maybe that? Yeah, episode 3 is Medusa. She's also written for shows like Charmed, Alias, Lost, Brothers and Sisters, Fringe, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Midnight, and Texas, which she was the creator of. Joe Trace is the writer behind episodes 4 and 6, who also wrote on a series of Unfortunate Events, the Netflix version. Andrew Miller wrote episode 7. He's the creator of the series Imaginary Bitches, as well as creator of The Secret Circle, whichever those might be. And he wrote the 2018 reboot, I guess, of Tremors. I don't think that got a ton of traction, but he worked on that. And lastly, episode 8 was written by Craig Silverstein, who is also a writer and creator of the, I want to say USA series, but it might have been like TBS or TNT or something. But the series Nikita, back in the day.
Oh, wow.
He created that one.
My foster mom was a big Nikita fan.
I remember that being one of those shows that was like on when I would watch like Burn Notice and stuff like that, but I never watched Nikita.
Nikita is like way before Burn Notice, though. Nikita is a USA original show. It's old as hell, though. I remember when DVR became a thing, and my foster mom like filled the DVR with old Nikita episodes. So
Maggie Q, Maggie Q was the star of that
Maggie
one.
Q, shout out to a real one.
It was USA, indeed. You say real old. First episode was 2010. So
I remember it being older for some reason. I don't know why. That's on me.
Yeah.
That's on me.
Let me see, because now I'm curious. When did Burn Notice air in comparison to that?
Around the same period.
Burn Notice is definitely like Burn Notice was 2007 to 2013. So
wait, Nikita. I thought there was two Nikitas.
Burn Notice older than
Nikita.
Nikita.
Swore Nikita.
I mean, there's like La Femme Nikita, which is like a kind of tried and tested story prior to that.
I thought there was an earlier. Oh, you know what? 1997 TV series La Femme Nikita is what I'm thinking of.
There you go.
Yes.
Or yeah, there's also a 1990 Nikita, but I don't know. That's about a convicted felon named Nikita. Anyway, back from the Nikita rabbit hole, our cast of characters here, we have starring as the titular Percy Jackson, we have Walker Scoble, who had, like, prior to casting, basically made his breakout star role as a young Ryan Reynolds in the Adam Project, the titular Adam of the Adam Project there, the young version, which I believe his audition for that was doing, or at least, I don't know if it was an audition for it, but I've seen him do it in interviews with Ryan Reynolds, but it's basically like he knows by heart the opening monologue to Deadpool 2, talking about like how he's gonna blow himself up and like fuck Hugh Jackman for doing it first.
Wait,
for
the
killing
kid
himself.
does?
Yeah, the kid. Yeah, that was his. That was, like, he's done that in interviews. Along, like, in Adam Project interviews, he would do that alongside like Ryan Reynolds.
That is amazing. I fucking love this. I already loved this kid. I love this kid even more now.
Yeah, I mean, like, the Adam Project, it's a largely forgettable Netflix movie, I would say, from a couple years ago. But it's fun in that it has like a very throwback to like the 80s and 90s kind of adventure. Like there's an E.T. vibe to it. There's a Back to the Future vibe to it. It's basically Ryan Reynolds is the adult version of that kid who goes back in time, meets the young version of himself, and they basically have to go on an adventure to try and save some stuff and save the future.
Cool.
And yeah, he very much channels all of the snark that Ryan Reynolds usually has in his movies, but as a 10-year-old kid. So yeah, he was a good casting for that. And so I remember when seeing like, oh, he's going to be Percy Jackson, I was like, cool. He was great in Adam Project. So he's also done another project called Secret Headquarters, and then Percy Jackson. Those are pretty much his big three things so far. So Leah Jeffries is Annabeth Chase here. She's been in Empire, Faith Under Fire, Rel, and Paw Parazzi, as in a puppy's paw kind of thing. Aryan Simadri is Grover Underwood. He was in episode. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I talk too much on these podcasts.
Yeah,
an episode of the reboot of Will and Grace.
Yeah,
as well as Parks and Rec. Or no, I've jumped ahead to Megan Mullally. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. Just to talk for a moment here. For anybody out there who has anything to say about the Annabeth casting, I hope you shut the hell up. This kid was phenomenal. She was everything Annabeth was in the books, but maybe better, because there's just an attitude this actress has, like a natural attitude that is not just like, I'm tough and I'm like quiet and I'm contemplative and I'm smart. It's not just that. She has a attitude of not just been there, done that, but even if I haven't done that, I have mentally prepared myself for that. She's such a great actress for this role. And to see her open up slowly the way Annabeth does in the book, the first book, is truly amazing. And also shout out to the change they made at the end that we'll talk about later, that I just think is a phenomenal change from the first book and sets up so many great stuff for the future of the series. I really hope that it gets in season 2 and we end up getting to see this keep going, because had a phenomenal time with it. That being said, you good, Trevor?
We'll hope so. So yes, and I have some trivia for her casting stuff later on. Aryan Simadri as Grover. He was in an episode of the rebooted Will and Grace. He's also in the SpongeBob movie Sponge on the Run, and he was in the recent, now delisted from Disney Plus, I believe, Cheaper by the Dozen, that had like Zach Braff in it. And he's also in a movie called Trevor the Musical, which I believe was also on Disney Plus. Virginia Cull as Sally Jackson was in Boardwalk Empire, Big Little Lies, and The Looming Tower. Tim Sharp as Gabe Ugliano did Undeclared, Till Death, Enlightened, Blunt Talk, and The Mighty Ducks Game Changers. Charlie Bushness or Bushnell? Like sometimes I look at these and I'm like, I wrote that wrong. Bushnell, Charlie Bushnell, as Luke Castellan, was previously in Diary of a Future President, which we've done an episode on. Glenn Turman was Chiron. In addition to being in Gremlins, I will always remember him as the corrupt mayor Royce in The Wire.
Yeah.
He's also in Super 8 and more recently Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Megan Mullally as Electo pops up a few times over the course of the season. Of course, most notable from Will and Grace, but she's also in Parks and Recreation and The Disaster Artist, as well as many, many episodes of Bob's Burgers. Jason Mantzoukas as Dionysus kind of had his breakout. He was, doing stand-up and stuff for many, many years, but he had his breakout in The League, as well as Parks and Rec. Disaster Artist, Big Mouth, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and now he is can be heard in Invincible. Adam Copeland as Ares. We, of course, popped because he has been, in the wrestling business for many, many moons as Edge in the WWE. Recently made the jump over to AEW, where he's now just performing as Adam Copeland under his own name. But in kind of his forced retirement there for many, many years, he made the jump over to acting and was in the series Haven as well as the series Vikings. Dior Goodjohn as Clarisse LaRue was in an episode of Glee as well as the rebooted series from a few years back, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Toby Stevens as Poseidon was in the Helena Bonham Carter 12th Night from when I was growing up. I was like, oh my God, yeah, he is from Die Another Day. He's Gustav Graves from Die Another Day. So shout out to that for our friend Logan and, the Bond diehard fan. He's also Maggie Smith's kid. Is just a fun fact.
I did not know that about him.
Yep. He was also in the series Black Sails and the recent rebooted version of Lost in Space. Also, just fun fact, because he was a big bad villain in Die Another Day, he's also done a lot of radio plays, James Bond 007 radio plays, where he's played Bond. So he's like been on both sides of the James Bond train. Lin-Manuel Miranda as Hermes. Was in stuff like Mary Poppins Returns, but he's, of course, probably best known for Hamilton, as well as his prior musical In the Heights. He's also in DuckTales, Vivo, and His Dark Materials in terms of some of his other acting work. The late, great Lance Reddick in one stellar pop-up performance as Zeus. Also, probably got his big break from The Wire. More recently, he'd been in John Wick, as well as iconic voices in Destiny and Horizon Zero Dawn / Forbidden West. Timothy Omenson as Hephaestus, who I didn't even recognize when you pulled him, when you saw him initially. Once we got a bigger close up, and I was like, oh yeah, that is obviously him. But of course, he's obviously Detective Lassiter from Psych, as well as the King from Gallivant, a deep cut show that you and I both love very deeply.
Which is also, to pause for a moment, I found it very cool to see him. For people who don't know, he suffered from a stroke a couple years ago, and he's had a very hard recovery. But it's great seeing him bounce back and hearing his voice again. He has such an iconic voice. The way that it's a good baritone type voice with his singing, but he also just has a natural cadence when he talks that speaks with a level of snarkiness and a level of gumption, attitude, in a really good way. And hearing him as Hephaestus, him being cast as Hephaestus, is a brilliant idea. And also, obviously he needs a cane to walk.
Yeah, I appreciated that, he just had that with him. And that was just a part of his character. Both Hephaestus needs it to walk, but also, he needs to walk. And so it's that's a great, tie-in, for also because Hephaestus is, the saddest of the gods. But he's also the smartest and has on more than one occasion really fucked people up. So sure. Jessica Parker Kennedy is Medusa in a notable episode. She's probably best known as young Nora Allen from The Flash. AKA like Barry and Iris's kid, Nora Allen. That version, not Barry's mom. And lastly, Jay Duplass as Hades, having been in stuff like The Mindy Project and the show Transparent. A little bit of trivia. One of Rick Riordan's chief complaints about Percy Jackson and the Olympians' The Lightning Thief from 2010 was the aging up of Percy and other characters to be in their late teens. As a result, when writing the pilot for this series, Riordan was very particular in stating that Percy was 12 years old. Rick Riordan famously was shut out of the development of the film adaptations of his books, but he assured fans that he would be more involved this time around, and was. Writer Rick Riordan said an essential trait needed for the role of Percy Jackson was sword fighting capability, and Walker Scobell so exceeded expectation and expertise for the sword fighting scenes that he had to essentially dumb down his skill in earlier episodes to fit Percy's early awkwardness. Appreciate that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The casting of Leah Jeffries, as you alluded to earlier, as Annabeth Chase was met with some public outcry from fans of the book who expected Annabeth to have a complete resemblance to her book counterpart. Rick Riordan was reported to have said that he based his casting on talent rather than the character's exact looks. I don't have the exact quote here, but I just saw it floating around that was basically like, he said to her, like, you're going to get some stuff, but remember whatever they say, I chose you. So like she has like his full backing and support. So
yeah, not only that, but also speaks volumes too. Like that's the thing. It's like, oh, well, book. It's like, first off, shut up. Nobody looks like their book counterparts. Nobody. Like absolutely nobody does. And that's great because guess what? Those books were written like 15, 20 years ago. So who gives a fuck?
It's also, I mean, like, even if characters do look like it, it's like that can change.
Absolutely.
Especially if the creator is going to say, yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. It's the same controversy happened when they cast like a black actress in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child on Broadway and stuff as Hermione. It was like, shut the fuck up. There are so much bigger things to care about in the world. Let people do the role justice.
I didn't hear anybody speak shit when Lance Reddick was cast as Zeus, because you knew that shit was going to be popping. You knew it was going to be great.
Every episode in the series is titled after a different chapter in the novel.
Yes.
The first, obviously, the first season here, pretty much the story of the Lightning Thief book. And those episode titles are, just for reference, Episode 1, I accidentally vaporized my pre-algebra teacher. Episode 2, I become Supreme Lord of the Bathroom. Episode 3, we visit the Garden Gnome Emporium. Episode 4, I plunge to my death. Episode 5, a god buys us cheeseburgers. Episode 6, we take a zebra to Vegas. Episode 7, we find out the truth, sort of. And Episode 8, the prophecy comes true.
A God Buys Us Cheeseburgers is still my favorite episode name. It's so fucking good.
Yeah. So Cam, what did you think of this one? Well, I guess what's your history with the Percy Jackson stuff?
So I saw like The Lightning Thief when it came out, not in theaters, but like when it came out on DVD. My niece, however, my oldest niece, was a massive, massive Percy Jackson fan. Like Percy Jackson kickstarted her love for reading, and she's now like a more voracious reader than I am. Like there's a lot of big readers in my family. And she matches my grandma as just like can pick up a book and finish it in no time flat, like, and remember everything about it. So Percy Jackson was like her gateway to loving reading and loving like Greek mythology and getting into lore and storytelling in a very big way. And it's remained like one of her big passions of like just what she enjoys the most in the world. And just my appreciation for Percy Jackson has always outweighed my enjoyment of it because of that aspect of it, that it did impact my niece so much. And like I read the first book after Ben's like, it's still really good. And it's like, all right, like Ben really liked it, still thinks it's good. My niece loved it. I'll pick it up and I'll finally read it. And I read it and I was like, that's great. I didn't pick up any more of the books. But I was really like, because I'm too old for them. I find it hard to care about 12-year-old dilemmas. Oh no, like things that are scary or big, like a big deal for 12-year-olds. as a 30-something-year-old man, it just does not hit the same way. Because also I was not a conventional like 12-year-old either, which I thought I would relate to it more. But me not being a conventional 12-year-old was not good and wasn't cool or awesome like being half god. So yeah, no, overall, I just think that I enjoyed the Lightning Thief movie. I understand people were disappointed by it. I thought it was like serviceable as a film. But like I never really understood the source material as being that big of a deal either. I do think that it definitely serves to have a story with some of the not complexities, but with a lot of like smart stacking of ideas that I think makes this series probably really special for people and like interesting for readers. A lot of that gets stacked up over time rather than getting delivered in like an hour and a half, 2 hour package. So I think overall, I really like the transition to TV show. I think is just going to be a better fit for it to begin with.
I mean, yeah, I think the transition to TV show is a better fit for a lot of these kinds of books in general. I mean, going back through the timeline of things, the first book coming out in 2005, so I was already 2 or 3 years into college. So yeah, this I've never read any of the books. The first movie comes out pretty much my last year finishing my second degree of college, my because I graduated my theater degree in 2008, then the economy collapsed, and I went back to finish my management degree with like a few classes a semester until spring of 2010. So that's my last semester of college is when I'm doing that. I'm already like working a full-time salary job kind of stuff and just kind of doing that. So yeah, Percy Jackson, I did not watch until we did that episode in 2020 of that D Plus show. And even that was like, it was because it was new on the service at that point and whatnot. It was like, oh, okay, here's an interesting thing. That said, like, if I had been a kid when like, or if these had been out when I was a kid, these would be extremely my shit.
Absolutely.
As a huge fan of like Greek mythology and stuff like that, I love most, modernizations of Greek mythology. Shout out to Stray Gods last year that kind of did that in terms of in the video game space. So yeah, like I remember watching the movie a little while back, and it's the same kind of thing. Like I didn't really get into the series of unfortunate events initially, but like at some point I went through and read like half of those books, I would say. But I mostly know them from the lackluster Jim Carrey version and then the far better Neil Patrick Harris versions of those things. And this very much had like moments and vibes watching this show of like those kinds of beats from the like the books and stuff like that of like, oh, this feels like a series of unfortunate events kind of like style adventure. And yeah, I thought it was especially fun kind of watching this in this form and getting like things that were obviously cut out of for the sake of time from the first movie and stuff like that. Like I remember from the first movie, like, okay, we do the Medusa thing, then we get to the Lotus, and then we're like down in the underworld, and then we're fighting Luke at the end kind of thing. And so yeah, like the whole Ares subplot I had no context for, so that was like brand new to me. The St. Louis like that side adventure. So yeah, it was fun kind of just getting to like experience those as I have no context, I have no knowledge of this stuff, and yeah, it was a fun time. I mean, like I think we both kind of enjoyed, and obviously what got you to binge it is like episodes are nice, you're in and out 30-40 minutes kind of thing, and you just want to see what happens next. They do a good job kind of setting the cliffhanger for the next step of the adventure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had like, it was a lot of fun just kind of hopping in and enjoying these. I remember like even on the film side of things, I remember when we talked about the first one, I joked about like, oh, maybe we'll do Sea of Monsters at some point. And everybody's like, no. And I was like, the only thing I know about Sea of Monsters was like Nathan Fillion was cast as Hermes in that one. And that was like, people love that kind of thing and love him in it or whatever. And so like, even there's a fun parallel of like, oh, the Lin-Manuel Miranda being Hermes in this. That's an interesting thing that obviously certainly speaks to me in a very different way than a Nathan Fillion performance as Hermes would. But but yeah, I love like seeing Edge, Adam Copeland pop up as Ares, God of War. Like I knew he was in it, obviously, but it's still fun to see him.
Yeah.
Be like, especially like the Edge I really know is the Edge from the Attitude Era. Like I had pretty much fallen out of wrestling before he became like the ultimate opportunist and that kind of era of him, of him like really rising to the top. So like my era of Edge, he wasn't like doing acting. Maybe I saw like him goofing around with Kurt Angle and stuff like that, and the Edge and Kristen like 5 seconds of posing and whatnot. But the bulk of his career, I just like he was on the shelf kind of, or the bulk of like, I didn't watch his kind of rise and the ruthless aggression and stuff like that. I was out. So I like the pop for him coming back and like getting to unretire in the Royal Rumble a few years back, like right before the pandemic basically, was great. And then getting to see him wrestle and stuff during the pandemic was just also weird because it was like he's so like grizzled now, compared to like young baby face,
you're used to
the Edge that I'm used to kind of thing. So getting to see this side of him as like an actor and stuff, like, and I watched like the first season of Vikings, but he's not.
No, he's not.
He didn't come in until later. So like I knew the kind of stuff that he'd kind of like done in acting because I knew what Vikings was, and I could kind of like transpose him into that. But seeing him in this, he's just a lot of fun in here, and I think he delivers a very like fun, like nuanced performance to Ares in a way that I wasn't expecting. And yeah, he's a ton of fun here. And shout out to him kind of getting this like, extra, phase of his career, both on the wrestling and acting sides of things.
Yeah. So I think I stopped before, I don't think I was around for like Money in the Bank era. Like, but he'd become the rated R superstar.
Yeah. I mean, well, like Money in the Bank is like what kind of shoots him into being the ultimate opportunist because he cashes in and
he becomes able to. So I was just before Ultimate Opportunist, which means I was still there for the whole Hardy Boy, like Lita. So Matt Hardy, Lita, and Edge. I remember that being like, don't know if this is like kayfabe or shoot, man. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going on here, man. Like,
it was real.
Oh yeah, I know it's real. Nowadays, like it was common knowledge now that it was real, but at the time it was like crazy because it got so violent out of nowhere. Like, Matt Hardy had been like fired, and then he shows back up, and they like, well, let's bring him back and let's do this. And it's like, if you ever watch like any behind the scenes stuff and they talk about it, it's like it's a crazy thing that they ended up doing to like, quote unquote, patch things up.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing like nowadays people be like, no, Vince, like, no, we're not doing that. That back then Vince was like, you're doing it, damn it.
It's crazy.
It's just interesting to see him in this kind of thing. We don't need to go down his like career trajectory, history kind of stuff.
No, like I remember the live sex show on SmackDown. Oh, yeah. That was a thing that I watched as a young boy. So like I remember that aspect of it. So I knew he could quote unquote act. Also, I caught him in Vikings and other stuff, and I'm like, I love that he's pursuing. I watched Haven, because he was in it, and I was like, this sounds like a cool idea, and I just watched it. It was good. It was all right. Like that's one of those kind of like cool sci-fi shows that doesn't really ever like get into its Duffy enough to like really make a difference. Just kind of stays top level concept, but I digress. Backing up here, I think it was great seeing him in this. I think a lot of the actors that they choose to play the gods never really feel like they overstay their welcome, which is great.
They're always like, oh, that's a nice little cameo kind of vibe and stuff like that. Like Timothy Amundsen was a great
we got two.
He makes the most of like his 5 minutes as Hephaestus kind of thing.
Yeah, it's cool because we get like a full we got 2 for 1 in that episode. Normally you get the 1. But they're always used to service the plot, never to service the cameo. I think Ares, just because Ares has such a meteor part of the plot in general, gets to show up twice and everything. But I think my favorite performance out of all of them was Hades. In the book, Hades is like much more aggressive and much more demanding. and is kind of like jealous of his brothers. But I think they do. I think Rick Riordan recognized in post after writing Hades in those books what Hades probably was actually like.
That's, I mean, yeah, I in doing a little bit of research and stuff, I saw like specifically in the graphic novel, people were like, this is a great interpretation of Hades. Cause yeah, in that version, he's not really jealous of his brothers. He's overwhelmed because hell is just constantly more and more people that he has to manage and deal with.
Yeah,
so why would he want to add everything else to that mix?
Yeah, no, thinking about it is like Hades in Greek mythology, everybody goes to Hades.
Yeah.
So it's not just like heaven or hell and like a separation. It's everyone who's ever died goes here.
Yeah.
And he has to manage that. And I love the kind of trick they play in this one where it's like, no, I have everything under control. Like, we have a process, we have a system, everything's orderly. I show up, I'm not even in like a suit or anything. I'm just in like a robe, like casual robe at home. Like the whole aspect of it, him being like, I quid pro, come on. Like, let's do this. Like, why are you holding it? It's like, I'm like, yes, this is the kind of Hades that I want. Somebody who's smart on the uptake, professional, and just about doing like I have my things, I have my goals. That's what I'm about. Not this jealous, like the way Chiron and Mr. D talk about Hades are like, oh, he's the most jealous of the brothers and all this stuff. And it's like, this is such like propaganda nonsense.
Well, I mean, yeah, like I mean, in the mythology, he's jealous because he's stuck in Hades while Zeus gets to, rule on high and Poseidon gets like the freedom of the seas, and he's stuck with all the like with he's stuck in like the worst place in the world kind of thing.
Yeah, because the Greeks believed dying was the
whatnot.
worst thing that could happen to you.
Yeah.
So
and so yeah, I like this variation, kind of this version of it as well.
I also he also comes across as like somebody who does like a juice cleanse, or like a whole like, oh no, I'm doing pomegranate juice now. It's way better for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like lower, like don't have to worry about the seeds or anything. It's great.
Yeah.
Like, oh, do you guys want some of that? Great.
I did like that he offers some pomegranate juice, because immediately I'm thinking of like Persephone and whatnot, of like, is he trying to like trap them here?
No,
in
that's
the underworld?
That's the best part, because when you actually think about it, it's the seeds. Pomegranate seeds is what he gives her, and she stays because of that.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Cameron, but I've definitely had juice that has still had the seeds in it.
That's fair. That's fair, I guess. My whole thing was he was offering the basically like seedless pomegranate juice. Like, hey, don't worry about it. Like, I can get you guys some treats and whatnot. No, he's just great in this. I don't know the actor very well, but he was just phenomenal.
Yeah, he's one. I think I remember. I vaguely remember. Like, I know I've seen him in the Mini Project, but I watched the Mini Project and pretty much forgot about it immediately many years ago. So I really only remember Mindy Kaling and Chris Messina from it. And then like I remember hearing great things about Transparent as an ensemble kind of cast, but it's been a little tainted because people are like, well, Jeffrey Tambor actually just really sucks. So it's kind of got that same stink that like Arrested Development has now to it. But like it was in the conversation, and it was one of those, it was like, it's a show that I guess I would talk about in the context of like Will and Grace, in that like it helped mainstreamify trans, since that's the whole thing. The grandfather is basically coming out as trans in that show, and so much like Will and Grace kind of like paved the road for introducing the world to like the gay culture kind of thing in a popular mainstream thing. Transparent did a similar thing, less high profile scale, but it was like one of the,
like, what was Showtime versus NBC, right?
I mean, I think Transparent was like a streaming show. I think it was like an Amazon Prime show or something like that. It was definitely something of like, it was prestige show more than it was like just on network, but it was still in an era where like that was all the buzz and people were like, clamoring to it, and it was getting Emmy nominations and stuff like that. So yeah, I think he was one of the kids in that. Yeah, I haven't seen him in a ton of things myself. He's like a name I occasionally see. He also does, I think, a lot more on like, I think he does some stuff on more like the directing side of things. Okay. More so than acting, maybe. But like directing and producing, I think, is kind of his main bailiwick. Let me see. or yeah, he's a producer on a whole bunch of stuff. He's a writer on a handful of things, director on a handful of things. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, he was a lot of fun to see him pop up and kind of just be Hades for a little bit. And that's the other thing, to your point of like, yeah, none of these are like serving the cameo. At the same time, they're also like, oh, I can't wait to see that god if they return,
Absolutely,
they reappear, kind of thing. Like those little moments were a lot of fun. And then there's also little moments of like, Athena and Aphrodite get a lot of like mention but aren't visible in this series, and it's very much like I want to see who they get for those roles in the future.
I'm stoked
and whatnot. So yeah, obviously, sadly, we won't get any more Lance Reddick as Zeus, so I'll be curious who they kind of like recast as I imagine that will be a more prominent role. But yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun just having, especially because I watched, the first half of this on the week to week basis. It was a nice, fun, like, okay, yep, that was 30 minutes. And I look forward to popping back in for this next week and kind of seeing where they pick up.
Yeah. And then I'm out there and I'm like, before I was like, I'm just going to watch like one more. And then I was like, well, I got to know how this ends, like where this goes.
Yep. So what would, in terms of, let's talk about the kind of the core trio.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on them?
They were phenomenal. Every single one of them. I freaking loved Percy. I loved Annabeth and adored Grover. There is just a whole lot about these characters where the bond they kind of develop, they break up Grover and they basically make Grover a big betrayer for Percy. And to the point where, like, he picked somebody who he's like, if somebody's going to betray me, like, I know you can. And it's like a very interesting pick to do that in story-wise, content-wise.
Mm-hmm.
But for the overarching, the actors and actress, like, just incredible. Absolutely astounding. Their ability to bring depth and character and life to these characters. And really bring a life to these characters and bringing them to the screen that I don't think is very common, much less like expected of a role like these. There is depth and complication with Annabeth's role in particular because she is supposed to have a harder nuance to her character that's tougher on the outside, soft on the inside. And it's really hard to do that well without it just like the tip point from hard shell to like soft interior, that balance, people rush to get through the hard outer shell too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this show does such a great job of just like taking off that hard edge layer by layer by layer until we get to the part where by the time you realize how close she's attached herself to Grover and Percy, it feels so natural. And it's funny to think about a time when she wasn't like that with them because of just how closely they followed each other, like how closely their bond has grown over even though it's only a couple of episodes, feels natural in a really great way. And Percy is just an astounding, like the level of snark this boy has, so damn good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, he was basically handpicked by Ryan Reynolds to be a young Ryan Reynolds in a movie.
And Grover does a great job of being somebody who looks young, but is playing older.
Yeah. Grover was the one that resonated with me the least. I don't think it was any part of the actor, though. I think it was just he feels the least written in this season. Like he's constantly kind of, his little side plot is like being a searcher for his uncle, or for Pan, I guess. And like they just kind of remember to sprinkle in a little bit of that like every few episodes. Like we get a little nod to it in the Medusa episode, and then again in the Lotus Casino episode. And other than that, he's just kind of, he's unfortunately just like a third wheel. And I didn't feel, I guess he also has like a great back and forth with Ares. I'll give him that. I really like the scene between him and Ares, and him kind of playing the game with Ares to like, try and get a little bit more and whatnot. So that was like, that's for me, that's probably his standout moment of the season. And it's unfortunate, I think, and I think maybe some of this also comes from the fact that like, yeah, he does forget way more in the Lotus thing. And so it's like sometimes he kind of feels like just dead weight or an extra person when Percy and Annabeth are going to be they're the demigods. They're the ones that are, doing a lot of the big stuff.
I think it comes down to the fact that at the end of the day, Percy and Annabeth are the demigods, aka the heroes of the story. And he really is I think he comes off as, if you expect him to be more than a sidekick, you're not it's not going to happen. That's not what these stories are about.
Yeah. But obviously to pick the most direct analog, maybe he, at least in this, he just doesn't even reach the Ron Weasley status in terms of that third character compared to a Harry and a Hermione kind of thing. But
I just don't think he's written to be that, though.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of the thing. It's
if that's going to be your trio of heroes kind of thing, he's written to be far below the other two in a way that Ron at least has his moments, or if he doesn't have his moments, he has his jealousy or something. He has other character traits to really lean into, and I just didn't get that from Grover.
I just don't think Grover's written to be that character. He's not in the book for sure, but he really is just meant to be a sidekick character, a kind of guiding character more so than a main character. And I think that's the thing. This is not this is their trio. I think it's done that way for marketing purposes to tie into the Harry Potter trio factor, but it's certainly not set up that way in the books, and it's not, or the book that I read. And it certainly just doesn't feel that way. He really is meant to be Percy's sidekick is what I picked up on, what I followed through on, and what I ended up getting. And so I think I didn't have an expectation that he was going to be anything more than that. So I'm not disappointed or feeling he's underwritten. I think he's exactly what he's supposed to be, even if that's not what I think the marketing was trying to sell as. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you're wrong to feel that way. I just don't think that was ever the intention. I think that was just something they tried to pull in for marketing purposes.
Yeah. Another thing that kept distracting me just over the course of the series is anytime Charlie Bushnell, aka Luke, was on screen, I was just he seems like a young Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah. Holy shit.
I
yes.
was you're clearly too old, and I don't think he has kids for Joseph Gordon-Levitt to be his kid. But are you a clone from some factory scraping kind of thing? That's just it's not we have Joseph Gordon-Levitt at home.
No, it's not that. No,
it's not that. But it's that just slightly off-brand Joseph Gordon-Levitt is what this kid kept reminding me of, and I was just
he's
uncannily weird.
He's Kirkland brand Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah,
exactly. Nothing wrong with it. Maybe in ways better.
Yeah,
but yes. Holy crap! I didn't realize it until you said that. I was he did look like somebody, and then that's it.
Because it's not even he looks like it. It's he acts, and his delivery is very JGL,
and it's very facial feature focused too. His facial features, the way, or not features, but his facial movements and the way he talks and the way he squints and everything he does feels very Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Yeah, very JGL. God, wow, that I did not pick up on that until you said it, and then it's
and now it's all you can think about.
The neurons all finally click together, and it's oh my God, it's the puzzle has been solved.
Yeah. What'd you think production value-wise of the show?
Stellar.
Yeah.
I don't need it to be is there some stuff that's not as great as it could have been? Sure. The beach scene with Ares and the fight in last episode, could they put more money in? Sure. Didn't need it.
I mean, I remember hearing you, because I don't think I had joined you yet, or I was maybe making food or something, but you were God damn, that Chimera looks great.
Oh, the Chimera looks amazing. That's the thing. There's some stuff in this show that is holy shit. Because it's not just a matter of they put money into it, the design for the Chimera, because instead of it being a classic three-headed beast, instead it's just a creature with all three traits. It has a venomous quilled tail that is actually, if you notice, is actually very small, snake fangs. It is has these reptilian scales to its front on its hoof legs. It's a weird mix of paws and hoofs in back, paws in front, horns, but also scaled, but like the lion features are never missing out of it. Instead of like a mane of hair, it's like a mane of scales and horns. And it's just such a brilliant design. I fucking loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. I thought it was, I would say, I think the production is hit or miss.
Yes.
I think
very hit or
the
miss.
stuff you can see, great. But we talked many times about how dark the show looks.
Yes.
And admittedly, it's because we were watching it in, a bright room. Maybe if we had turned the lights off, we would have gotten less glare and stuff like that.
A bright room in a 1080p, like max.
Yeah.
Like 60 hertz.
It reminded me of like the super dark episode of Game of Thrones that everybody crapped on in like the final season.
Definitely,
there were a lot of that of like, God, I can barely see what's going on or where the characters even are on the screen. And I know that night stuff and whatnot. A lot of this was like also in the underworld and stuff like that. There were those kinds of moments, and a lot of that is to hide less finished or less time, allotted special effects and stuff like that. But yeah, so any of those, I was like, all right, I don't like this. But like a lot of the, the day stuff, like the Chimera and sequences like that. Yeah, there was a lot to really enjoy there. And I think they did a lot of good stuff throughout. I still enjoy like the psychological warfare that happens kind of in the Medusa episode. I think there's a lot of fun to be had there when like the characters are really kind of there's still that mistrust among our trio.
Yes.
And both Alecto and Medusa are kind of playing against them in that regard. I think there's a lot of fun there. So yeah, I liked, there was definitely a lot to like about this. And my biggest gripe is probably just like, there were things where it was just like, this is too dark. I can't see anything, that I can't follow what's going on because I can't see what's going on. The amusement park was another one of those, which was interesting because like once we got into like the tunnel of love / thrills or whatever it was, like the animation to tell like Hephaestus's story and stuff was like beautifully done, really cool, all that stuff. So I was like perfectly content if like all of the effort really gets put into that, and so the rest of what we see is a very just like run down and it's in the dark, so we don't have to pour too much resources into that.
Yeah.
It's all fine. Like the trade-off works for me ultimately, but yeah, there was a little too much time just in largely black screens that I couldn't completely make out what was supposed to be going on. What did you think of the Percy relationship and his mother and like our flashbacks to it and stuff like that? And I don't know if like you may know better from the book, like how much of that backstory is kind of like explored in the book versus what was just, fresh here. Similarly, I'm also curious if the backstory about like Annabeth and Grover previously coming to Camp Half-Blood and stuff like that was like if that's fleshed out in the first book as well, or because that a lot of that was just new to me. Like I didn't know about any of that like Annabeth backstory.
Yeah, they don't introduce. They don't introduce.
If it was in the first movie, I didn't recall it. I didn't clock it.
Oh yeah, not only that, it's not really brought up a lot in. It's not a thing that is brought up in like her back. That's not part of her backstory. They don't go into that much detail about her.
Okay.
I will also say like her and Luke's relationship is a bit more nebulous and a bit more like Luke is much older than Annabeth, but like I think he's like 18 or 19 in the book. But they because I think it's from also Percy's point of view. The books are from Percy's point of view, so I think there's also a level of like girl I likes older guy who's this cool ideal of what I think I like wish I was. And I think Rick Riordan has gone on record saying like was meant to kind of play into that, but it was never that. Like they definitely, so when he calls her his sister, that's like out there. Bringing up Thalia this early in the story, not part of the book from what I remember. And like I might be misremembering things because it's been a couple of years since I read the book. But I just remember that the like Annabeth's story is not really told in this book so much. She's still kept a bit more of a mystery.
Gotcha.
but she is kind of revealed to be a bit of a badass. So
cool. Any other favorite moments, favorite shout-outs, anything you want to give some love to before we dive into grading?
I think the only last thing I want to say is, I really, really, really want to see more of this show.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the cast is spectacular. I think that there's a couple of actors that I can think of that could be good, like step-ins for Lance Reddick now that he's gone. It will, but also because Zeus does not show up in person as much. Yeah, I would just love to see Sea of Monsters. I have no idea what the hell that's about, but I'm down for it. Like, let's go, second season. I'm into it.
Yeah, one of the trivia things that like I don't put too much stock into was like the show is planned to be 5 seasons, one for each of the the original 5 books kind of thing. It's like, sure, that might be a plan. Who knows if it'll actually see through that far, especially given this era where streamers are canceling shows just for the write-offs and stuff. And obviously I believe the show kind of was greenlit under the old regime before Bob Iger kind of came back and has been slashing a whole bunch of stuff. That said, I believe also this was doing crazy numbers on Disney Plus when it hit. And obviously we're, recording this the week of the finale. So I don't know if they have like final numbers and whatnot, but I'm sure they will tout that soon and be like, yes, and Percy Jackson is coming back for a second season. If they're going to do it, they'll do that soon, kind of thing. But yeah, we will see. All right, then let's dive into the report card. We grade from A+ to F. What do you want to give the first season of Percy Jackson and the Olympians?
It's an A+ for me.
A+?
Absolutely.
It's a solid A for me. A+ for you doesn't surprise me, given that you loved it so much you just burned through it all in one night.
Yes.
It's I love the Greek mythology-ness of it. I'm very much like we talked about. I'm at that age. I don't need the young adult stories and stuff like that. This certainly could have been a worse young adult story, so I'm okay that like it wasn't. It's probably not something I would have like if we didn't do this podcast. Probably isn't something I would bother really diving into and stuff like that, because I just don't like my time can go elsewhere and my attention can go elsewhere. But for what it is, very good, very well done. And yeah, we'll see where they go from here. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. These suggestions are A Hero's Journey, The Making of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. It's already out there for you. The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Loki, American-Born Chinese, National Treasure, Doctor Who Special 1, and Miss Marvel. Notably, not on that list, the Percy Jackson movies. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure those are still on Disney Plus. Let me check that real quick.
Rick Riordan had a few things in his contract, and this was one of them. Don't watch those movies. No suggested movies.
You don't. We're not putting those in the breakdown. Those are both Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief and Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters are both still out there on Disney Plus. Let me double check. Apparently just clicking those just opened a thing. Yep. Then you can play that, and yeah, you can play the second movie too. So yeah, they're out there. Disney Plus, not recommending them to you though. So that's a fascinating thing. Anyway, I imagine it's probably driven more by like, here's what people recently have watched, and nobody's really hopping back in to watch those ones. Extracurriculars, you watching anything else on Disney Plus as you burned through all these, Cam?
I gotta watch Echo, I guess. Yeah,
we still gotta do that. Yeah, I've not circled back to that. They did. They put out the like behind the scenes making of Echo is out on Disney Plus now as well. So yeah, maybe we'll get to that next week. Who knows? So that's going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Cam, for joining me to talk about Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Season 1. You follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to?
Check out That Nerdy Site Show. We are returning back with it. If we obviously didn't do one last week, so we're doing one this weekend. So you'll get that on Monday. It's our return to podcasting. We have a lot to talk about, a lot of games that we've been playing over the break. A lot to talk about.
Yep, we are. We're done with our like best of 2023 episodes. So we got that. At some point, maybe you and I'll sit down and do like a what we're excited for in 2024, because that's something we've done in recent years as well, in terms of like, our most anticipated games and movies and stuff like that. But yes, we'll be back to just kind of a normal episode this week after taking last week off, just because we'd already put out 10 hours of podcasts and Libsyn was going to charge us if we tried to upload basically another minute. So I didn't really want to do that while January was still on the meter. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. In addition to That Nerdy Site Show, go check out my Let's Plays of Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth that have been going up on Tuesdays and Thursdays starting this last week. I'm hopping into that and kind of going the Baldur's Gate, like just I'm going to play through this game on stream and have some fun with it. So I have 2 episodes are live as of recording this. I've got another 4 in the can, so I've got another couple weeks beyond that. And I'm still only in chapter 3. So enjoy that. It's first 2 episodes here were chapter 1. Then chapter 2 is a single episode. And then chapter 3 is basically so far largely starting to dive into all the sub stories and stuff. So yeah, get to have some fun with the bonkers weirdness of Like a Dragon universe back in the Like a Dragon Yakuza stuff. If you like that, you can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. If you like what you heard, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.